Today on Locked On Rockies, the baseball season officially underway as the 2023 Colorado Rockies have played spring training baseball, and it started out pretty good. Let's overreact. Let's react. Let's break it all down today on Locked On Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 27th day of February in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team each and every single day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, I got news for you. We are your source for daily Colorado Rockies talk for all things Rockies baseball, at least from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find it right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. And we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies. You'll be taken to where you need to go. And if you subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube, you will have the show first. You can be part of the show's live chat and get your questions answered live here on the show. Today on the Locked On Rockies podcast, we are talking spring training. We're talking about how the spring training season has started for the Rockies, and we're going to overreact a little bit in the first segment. We're going to freak out a little bit just because of how things have gone for the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies, as of right now, and we're recording this in the bottom of the fifth in their game 3, have scored 30 runs in 3 runs of spring training ball. And everything, obviously, needs to be taken with a grain of salt. This is spring training baseball, after all, of course. But when you're looking for exactly how you want your Colorado Rockies to start spring training, when you want to look for the absolute potential of the Colorado Rockies, when you want to see at least a glimpse of what this team is capable of, this is it. If the Rockies become a much better team offensively this year, because remember, this team has not been a great offensive powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination for the past few years. And while that's spring training, and while we're game 3 into spring training, you can't sit there and deny that it's incredibly refreshing to watch a Rockies offensive approach that's aggressive, that has paying off, and shows this team in the driver's seat when it comes to being on the other side of the ball. This is a team that needs to be offensive focused. This is a team that needs to dominate the offensive side. And this is a team that is already being led by young guys looking to do damage on the offensive side. The Rockies scoring back to, again, it's spring. It's the first 3 games. I know, but it's still pretty darn great that the Rockies rattled off a couple of back-to-back double-digit run performances, including games with multiple home runs from multiple players. The Rockies have to do that. The Rockies have to do damage. That's exactly what the Rockies need to do. That's the formula for success, because the pitching wasn't perfect in either one of those games. The pitching got themselves out of jams, and the pitching has been great for the Rockies so far in today's game, just allowing their first hit in the bottom of the 5th here currently in this spring training game. But that's kind of the games how it's going to go. You're going to have teams punch back. You're going to have Kyle Freeland get dinged for a couple of runs early. But let's take a look at the Diamondbacks situation, for example. Let's say you're in the thick of just a close game. This is a division rival. Rockies rattle off 2 right off the bat, but the Diamondbacks get themselves right back in the game. The Rockies respond with 2 runs of their own, and that builds the momentum. The Rockies took too long to get into ball games last year. This needs to be a team that is aggressive and on top of things and attacking the ball early, and that's what they've done. Putting up crooked numbers as, let's see here, who makes a beautiful play over here in right field. Oh, nice little diving catch there in right field by Nolan Jones. there. But it is a great start to the season so far for the Rockies, because the issues with the Rockies and the possible fixes, beautiful throwdown. No, not going to get that. Oh, they are going to get him, but I don't think they are going to be able to get that. That was a close play at second. Elias Diaz almost throwing someone else. It's just so exciting to have Rockies baseball again to watch. The other thing that we can take away from some of these games is that the fact that the Rockies there's excitement with this team. I think he got the back end of that bag. I know, I'm sorry, this isn't great for you guys that aren't watching the spring training game along with me here. I'm just live reacting to some stuff. But anyway, everything we've seen from this tiny sample size points to things to be excited about for the Rockies. And this is the prospects, and I'm seeing in the live chat, Zach Veen, holy smokes, this dude loves Arizona. I don't know what it is about playing at Salt River. That guy is insane. And I heard a little bit on the radio broadcast today before I've been watching a kind of a good chunk of the A's broadcast, and it wasn't a hit they gave up. It was a walk. So no hits still given up by the Rockies pitching staff here in game number 3. They're aggressive on the base path. They're stealing bases. They're going first to third on base hits. That's generating offense. That's being smart. That's using speed. The Rockies have often had players that they might not always be leading league, but they're above average or speedy guys. Use your speed. Use hit and runs. Use the doubles. Use the alleys in the gaps in Coors Field and be aggressive on the base paths. And we're seeing with the rules, teams are more willing to steal bases. The one thing you can for sure take away from these first 3 games, and it's going to be there, teams are going to run. Teams are going to steal bags. Teams are going to be more aggressive on the base path. The hit and run, when executed effectively, could be major for a team like the Colorado Rockies and for some of these players that maybe aren't as much a big power bat, but someone that can get the ball in play and keep runners in motion. If you can have someone that hits behind Jonathan Daza, that's like Chris Bryant, for example. I mean, that's a huge potential of what Chris Bryant can do, who homered in today's game, by the way. He can keep it in play. He's going to have a good chance of putting the ball at least in play. You can send Jonathan Daza, and you're generating stuff right off the top of your lineup. It seems to be a pretty interesting mix of utility players as well. We, in our State of the Shortstop episode, we didn't really talk too much about Alan Trejo, honestly, and that's on me. I kind of spaced a little bit on Alan Trejo, and I mean, he still needs to fight, and he wants to remind us why. He still had that pretty solid little stretch there, but all of the players that have needed to show a nice start have started to show it. Kyle Freeland got dinged a little bit yesterday, but kind of returned to form and was able to get back in action and do what he does in getting ground ball double plays. Another thing the Rockies have been doing this spring training. Hopefully the Rockies are on track to lead the league or be one of the best teams at turning double plays. And it looks like their pitching staff is going to allow for that. And this offense, I mean, again, this is the stuff to get a little excited about. The title of this is Overreacting. So yes, I know I am overreacting. But no one's given the Rockies a chance. No one thinks that the Rockies have actually been building for something. And yes, the Rockies have been right or deserve the criticism that they have been given. But when you look at stuff like this is a team that isn't struggling with the new rules. This is a team that has been able, that out of so far has only had the one violation with Daniel Bard and such. But this is a team that it looks like it's a little bit more put together and a little bit more well-oiled than we think. We'll have to see how it progresses throughout the rest of spring training, but the Rockies showed up to play this spring, and it's highlighted and headlined by the young guys. I want to dive into the live chat here because there's lots going on here in the live chat. We'll take a look at some of the stat lines from the games as well, and we'll kind of bring things back down a little bit. But we'll continue to focus on what to be excited about. And we'll also take a look at some of the stuff to be concerned about as well here coming up in segment number 2. And we'll talk a little bit more about that similar type of stuff coming up here in segment number 3 as well. But if you're looking for a delicious treat, don't and you don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. And so, yeah, I know you're getting in the groove of things. You've been getting in your new habits, the new year well underway. It's spring right around the corner. You're looking to keep the momentum going. Why not keep yourself ready and armed with some delicious, tasty treats? Built Bar. And Ehlers Montero almost went yard there. Montero might like the Built Bar, and he might like the fact that they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they got unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. They have so many delicious flavors, and I don't know how they manage to keep them at usually 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. You can see all the macros for yourself and more flavors at Built.com, but that's not the only place you can get your hands on a Built Bar. Head down to your local Sam's Club or your local Walmart today, and you can find yourself a box of Built Bars, and you can check out the cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. You will thank me later when you check out a Built Bar, and check out Built.com. Want to thank you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. We are your home for Rockies baseball on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, you like fantasy baseball? Well, guess what? For your second listen, you can go check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and you're going to win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, of course, is your team every day. We stream all of our episodes live on YouTube, so you can be part of the show and be part of the live chat, just like Lux Ace, Leandro, Eric, Harper, Brandon, Kramer, and more. All here checking us out. Let's take a look here what the reaction from Rockies fans are here in the early parts of spring training. Lux Ace says our prospects are that good. Veen is him. Leandro says Zach Veen is insane. And man, that is exactly, he's got the smile. He's electric. He's got the personality. And if he steals bags, he can play. He says he'll play anywhere in the outfield. I can't remember which one he said he had a preference for, but man, is he just someone to really be excited about. And if he keeps playing like this, he's going to be up in purple way sooner than we think here. The Rockies could be young going into this year. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Rockies handle Zach Veen if he continues to be a stud. Eric Harper says, rock on, loving Rockies radio for these games. Absolutely. Jack and Jerry, always wonderful to hear from them. And I love how they call a game. And it's very much nostalgic because I've been listening to them my entire life. They've been the radio team ever since I can remember. I literally cannot think of someone else other than the pandemic season when they brought in the other guy for that season, other than Jack and Jerry. So shout outs to Jack and Jerry. One of my preferred ways. You'd be surprised how much of the season I actually consume via radio. It's very nice. It's very great. And I do like how easy it is to put that up on the MLB TV app. Let's see. The D-backs, Leandro thinks the people are blowing some smoke for the D-backs. The D-backs are good. Fortunately, we can't sit here and say that the D-backs aren't good here. They got a lot of talent, and we'll see. But the Rockies played the D-backs well last year, and if they play the D-backs well this year, that's going to be a good barometer as two teams kind of trying to build up at the same time. So it is something that we can see. Leandro says, I'm so glad we got Nolan Jones. I don't know if he's going to make the roster, but it really strengthens our corner infield. Yeah, Nolan Jones is really interesting. Hector Cortez, was it Castro? Yeah, I was going to say Cortez. Castro has been a nice little add so far too. Really interesting with the Rockies there. Nolan Jones. The Rockies just have it's new utility depth options for the Rockies, and that gives us something kind of new as we've seen the same utility players for a bit for the Rockies, and you kind of knew what the depth of the Rockies was going into the season. You knew kind of what Garrett Hampson was all about. You knew about Sam Hilliard. You knew some of these utility guys that the Rockies were using all the time, and now the Rockies can just, it's utility play, it's bench players, it's depth. Hopefully we can get a breakout from one of these guys and we really get to see something special. And of course we wish nothing but the best for these other for the Rockies players moving on to new places. But we get to see a new situation. We're not going to get used to Hampson coming up. It's a nice, refreshing look at a new wave of Rockies. I mean, there's a lot of new faces on this Rockies team this year. This is a different looking Rockies team. This is going to be, I would say, something that will be a little surprising, I think, for some. There's going to be a lot of surprises and a lot of people asking, if they're not watching through spring training, who these guys are. Because the Rockies with these new faces. Annie Scrant says, I love the attitude of these young guys, in my opinion. I think they are separating themselves from the negative bias around the Rockies. Here's hoping, because again, it says something that the Rockies have shown up. And it's day 3, it's spring training, it's yada, yada, yada. But the Rockies have shown up to work here, and Zach Veen's working a full count right now after going down 0-2 early. The Rockies it's just refreshing to see. Because instead of going into a season where there's obviously a ton of questions in this season, but there's at least questions about, will these prospects hit? And that makes you excited. Because then you're watching them perform and you're watching the possibilities. There's just so much more reason to watch the Rockies this year and follow them, especially if the spring continues to go well, as the position battles are going to be figured out. If these players continue to have great springs, what can you do? What are you able to do? What are you going to do? The Rockies might have a depth of good to decent players, and that's going to be fine. Again, I'm not saying because the Rockies have had 3 good spring training games that every issue is going to be solved and the Rockies aren't going to go through tough stretches. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is why you're encouraged. This is why there's reason to watch the Rockies. This is a good first step for the Rockies in 2023. Yes, we're overreacting into the possibilities and the what ifs. And yes, they're scoring a bunch of runs and they're throwing a no-hitter here and all this blah, blah, blah. Sounds a little nutty to people on the outside, but this is what we've talked about all offseason. And this is what we're going to need to continue the conversation. If the Rockies youngsters continue to lead the way for the Rockies and set the precedent, they're going to be a decent team. They're going to steal wins from teams. They're going to be in situations where people are saying, what the heck is going on with Colorado? Especially highlighted by the fact if Chris Bryant can swing the bat well, who went yard today, who's batting 500 so far in his time in spring. Ryan McMahon's batting 500 through his first couple of games. It seems to be the one. CJ Cron hasn't been able to get anything going yet. But here's the deal. On top of that, the young guys are doing it. Montero's batting 500. Bouchard's getting a couple of ABs here. Zach Veen's off to batting 600 so far. I mean, the couple of RBIs, they're scoring runs. They're driving in runs. They're scoring. All of that are things for positive thoughts, positive momentum. But, it's spring. The Rockies have to do this throughout the spring. Then the Rockies need to be able to step up and do this. They need to also create and craft what their plan is going to be and make sure that these players have their identities. That's one thing I'm a little hesitant, and still, even with all this, what are you going to do with all this stuff? What are you going to navigate? What if Tovar and Trejo have a similar spring? Does that mean you immediately go to Ezequiel Tovar right away, or do you go with Trejo, who's been up there a little bit more than him? Not a ton more experience, and Trejo necessarily hasn't dominated enough to warrant that, but make sure that the Rockies players and these young guys know what their role is going to be going into the season as the spring goes along. But for now, we can relish in the fact that this team is starting off hot offensively, which is exactly what they're going to need to do if they want to start the season off strong. This team needs to come right into the season ready to hit and ready to win some shootouts, ready to win those early sloppy games in the beginning of the season. There's going to be some bad baseball at the beginning of the year, both by the Rockies and their opponents. They need to keep this up. It needs to be sustainable offense. This cannot be fluky. The Rockies can't score 12 runs on one game and then hit 2 hits the next day. We've seen that too much over the past few years. While we're overreacting, we really hope that this offense is going to be consistent, because this is a potential to be a young offense. I bet, because I think one thing we might need to prep ourselves for, Rockies are going to strike out a lot. As much as I don't want that to be the case, we got to I think with all these young guys, they're going to strike out a lot. But I also think they're going to walk a lot. I think they're going to have good plate discipline, and I think they're going to take advantage of some stuff. I mean, again, the biggest overreaction we can make from spring training so far, 3 games in, the Rockies are not who people thought they were. The Rockies are more capable. The Rockies are closer to contention than we might think. But all that success, all the positivity, all the good vibes, all that good energy and stuff teeters on a ton of young guys ready to handle the Major League Baseball season. The Major League Baseball season. Not spring training. 162 games against the best in the business with increased travel, new rules, new teams you're facing, new environments. The Rockies have a ton of excitement, and there's reasons to be excited by the beginning of spring training. But the Rockies also have a lot of players that need to continue to learn and figure out and handle the game of baseball. No reason to suggest that they have given anything to that they haven't, especially with how much time the Rockies have given some of them. But that is a factor. Can we sit here and say confidently we think the Rockies are going to score 12 runs a game? No. But it's encouraging to see the Rockies bounce back, score runs early, and get after it so far in spring training. There are things to be encouraged by, absolutely. Let's talk new rules. Let's talk pitch clock. That's the big thing, I think, on people's mind. And I want to hear from you, Rockies fans, either in the live chat or in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts about the live chat are, or not. I guess you could do that, but I meant the pitch clock here in the chat and the comments. And we're going to talk about that here coming up in segment number 3. Locked On Rockies podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is just search Locked On Rockies, and you'll be taken to where you need to go. Hey, like I said, Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Fantasy Baseball coming your way real soon. I'm not a fantasy baseball guy myself, but Matt and Dom, they are, and they got you covered every day. They're going to bring you the best draft strategies. They're going to help you keep up to date with all things fantasy baseball. That is all brought to you by the part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And, of course, the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast. The Joker. Oh, boy. The Joker. Off to doing what he does yet again, being a stud. Man, was that something last night. Pretty amazing. The best player in all of basketball plays for the Denver Nuggets. It's pretty incredible, and they do a great job over there. And of course, Locked On Buffs podcast. I forgot. I got to keep giving them a shout out. So, segment number 3 here. Let's talk pitch clock. And I'm gonna sound a little mean. I'm gonna sound a little mean here to some. You just got to get over it. I mean, and taking the clips and putting it out there and making a big stink. Yes, it was a bummer that Red Sox Braves game ended in the pitch clock, calling it a strikeout, and it was a tie. But guess what? It's also the second game of spring training. You also are taking the pitch clock and have a month and a half to figure out and get used to it and see what's going to happen. And by the middle of the season, I don't think we're going to be talking that much about it, other than the fact that it's kind of nice that the game moves along a little bit more. I think the pitch clock is going to be a hassle. I would say the days of you thinking it's going to be okay if you show up in the third inning and still get a lot are kind of over. I think you got to get to the ballpark closer to first pitch as the A's score off of some stealing wild pitching here. But I believe there's still no hits, but the A's do plate a run. So spring training ball is still in effect. The Rockies definitely not perfect in spring training, even with the hot start. But it's going to be, I think this is the right move. I think that it's a jarring thing, and it's tough in a sport that doesn't like to change and is resistant to change. But baseball games shedding off some of the excess time, baseball games, getting a little bit shorter is fine. Yes, you're getting less baseball, but it's less baseball where it's just kind of like you're on your phone or you're kind of spaced out and you're not paying full attention. This game here. This is actually the first time that I've been able to watch the Rockies with a video feed since the season started. I have MLB TV, so I'm able to watch the A's feed here for the Rockies. And I gotta say, I'm not noticing anything that's outlandish. Yes, seeing a clock on a screen counting down in a baseball game is probably the most jarring thing about it. But I'm seeing a lot less of people adjusting, I know, and I was the same way. I had to get into the box the same way. Baseball is so, you got your rituals, you got your ways, you got all that stuff, sure, but you can cut it out. I mean, we're asking people to just kind of move things along. And I honestly think instead of it being something where the pitchers need all this time, and I think you can get potentially more in a groove by keeping the pace, by keeping the energy, by not allowing so much downtime. And I think so much time to think about, and this is going to sound like a bad take, think about your pitch. I don't mean it in the strategy sense, but I'm just, that split second moment where you had to step off because you had that thought creep in the back of your head about, is my grip right? Is my grip good enough? And I'm not saying it's happened all the time, but that stuff creeps into your head. So I think that the pitch clock is sure, it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's going to help move the game along. It's going to make baseball a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. And all the issues, I mean, there was a lot of, I heard, I was listening today, it wasn't a great start for minor league baseball, but over a couple months they got there. And what did you hear about pitch clock at the end of the minor league season last year? It was nothing but glowing reviews, and then mixed in some skepticism about changing baseball, the new baseball, and all this stuff. It's nice. It's nice when the games have the pace, and the Rockies have kind of defied the pitch clock. Their games haven't been really all that short. But this is a way that I think you can just move things along a little bit more and show people that baseball is a little more action-packed. It's not going to change everyone's mind, but when you tell someone you love baseball and you love watching baseball and they don't, what's their first criticism? Well, not enough action. They stand around the whole game. This moves things along. This makes things a little more stagnant. It keeps the pulse alive in a game. And I think that's kind of good. That's a good thing. It's nice to always just throw on a game of baseball and you're covered for, God knows how long, back in the day and before. But it's kind of nice to know now that there's a little bit more of a pace. There's a little bit more of a pulse to the game. I'm all for it. What do you think of the pitch clock? Let me know in the comments. Let me know here in the live chat as well, or on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. But folks, that is going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Just search Locked On Rockies and you'll be taken to where you need to go. Episodes are recorded live on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, so you can be making sure that you're staying up to date with all things Colorado Rockies baseball right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Want to thank everyone for popping into the live chat today. We had a great live chat, as we always do here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. And folks, why don't you go make Locked On Fantasy Baseball your second listen of the day? And you can stay up to date with all things Colorado sports with the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs podcasts. Until next time, folks, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.